I began by suggesting marriage counseling, hoping that maybe we just needed help communicating. She agreed, though not enthusiastically, and we started seeing a therapist I had found online. During those sessions, it became painfully clear that our problems ran much deeper than I had imagined. When the therapist asked her what she valued most about our marriage, her response shocked me. Stability. Not love, companionship, or connection, just stability. She admitted that she appreciated how I provided for her and allowed her to live comfortably, but when asked about her emotional connection to me, she simply shrugged. It felt as though my role in her life had been reduced to a financial safety net. The sessions didn't last long. After just 3 visits, she declared counseling a waste of time and refused to return. I, however, continued going alone, desperate to understand where things had gone wrong and how I might fix them. During one of those solo sessions, my therapist asked me a simple yet profound question. What are you holding on to? I didn't have an answer. I sat there, stunned, as the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I was holding on to a fantasy of what my marriage used to be, or more accurately, what I had always hoped it would be. I clung to the belief that if I just tried hard enough, I could rekindle something that had probably never truly existed. From that moment on, I began to see the cracks in our relationship more clearly. I noticed how dismissive she was toward me in front of her friends, how she barely acknowledged me when I came home from work, and how she made no effort to include me in her life. It wasn't just neglect, it was indifference. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. Her car wasn't in the driveway, but I heard voices coming from the back patio. As I walked around the side of the house, I saw her sitting with a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing, leaning in close, and sharing a bottle of wine. My heart sank. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I stayed hidden, my mind racing. Maybe it was innocent, maybe he was just a friend. But deep down, I knew better. When she came inside, I asked calmly who the man was. Her response was casual, almost dismissive. Oh, just a friend from the gym. She acted like it was no big deal, but the way she avoided eye contact told me everything I needed to know. That night, I slept in the spare room. Not because of my snoring, but because I couldn't bear to be near her. The next day, I decided to dig deeper. I hated the thought of snooping, but I needed the truth. Her phone was always by her side, so I checked the shared computer instead. What I found shattered any remaining hope. There were dozens of messages between her and the man from the patio. They were flirty, intimate, and explicit. They had been seeing each other for months. She had even shared details about our marriage with him. How she felt trapped, how she thought I was boring, and how she wished she had never gotten married. When I confronted her, she denied everything at first. But when I showed her the messages, her demeanor changed. Instead of apologizing, she became defensive. What do you expect? She snapped. You've been so distant since the accident. I need more than you can give me. That was the moment I knew it was over. No amount of therapy or effort on my part could repair what she had broken. She didn't love me, respect me, or value our marriage. The next morning, I packed a bag and left. I didn't say much, just that I needed space. I stayed with a friend while I worked through the logistics of filing for divorce. She didn't fight me on it. In fact, she seemed relieved. That hurt more than I can put into words. The divorce process was painful, but straightforward. Since we didn't have children, and our finances were mostly separate, it was finalized within a few months. I left her the house, and most of our belongings. I didn't want any reminders of the life we had built, or rather, the life I had built while she enjoyed the benefits. In the years since, I've focused on rebuilding myself. Therapy has been a constant, helping me untangle the emotional scars left by my marriage. I've reconnected with old hobbies and made new friends who genuinely care about me. For the first time in years, I feel free. Looking back, I don't regret the marriage. It taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth, boundaries, and the importance of mutual respect in a relationship. But most importantly, it taught me that sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. To anyone reading this who feels stuck in a one-sided relationship, you deserve better. You deserve a partner who sees you, values you, and fights for you as much as you fight for them. Don't settle for less. I did for far too long, and it nearly broke me. But here I am, still standing, still learning, and finally at peace. When I opened the door, the house was silent. Empty. No balloons, no decorations, not even a note. I checked my phone hoping for a message or a clue. Instead, I found a photo she had posted on social media, a luxurious spa day with her friends. The caption read, "Self-care day with my girls." Much needed. That night, I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, eating lukewarm takeout while a movie played in the background. I barely noticed the screen. My mind was racing. Was this really my life now? Lonely dinners and unreciprocated efforts. As I stared at the untouched slice of cake I had bought for myself, a painful clarity settled over me. I couldn't do this anymore. I wanted out. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. Sitting in his office, I explained everything. How distant my wife had become, how I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. He nodded sympathetically and walked me through the process of drafting divorce papers. I felt an odd mix of sadness and relief. For the first time in years, I was taking control. Over the following weeks, I began preparing for my departure. I stopped engaging with my wife unless absolutely necessary. Our conversations became brief and perfunctory. In the evenings, while she was out with friends or glued to her phone, I started selling off my belongings, items that held sentimental value but couldn't come with me. Each sale was bittersweet, but it felt like shedding a layer of the past. I bought a new car and rented a garage space a few blocks away. Slowly, I packed the essentials, clothes, important documents, and a few keepsakes that truly mattered. I moved them bit by bit, careful not to arouse suspicion. She didn't notice. She didn't ask where I was going or what I was doing. 2 months after my birthday, the day finally came. She left for yet another lunch with her friends, and I seized the moment. With everything packed into my car, I left the divorce papers on the desk in the spare room alongside a handwritten letter. In it, I explained my decision, not out of anger, but with quiet resignation. I wished her well and thanked her for the memories, even if they now felt distant. As I closed the front door behind me, I didn't feel regret. I felt free. Days turned into weeks. It took her 10 days to notice I was gone. Her first message was brief. "Is this some kind of joke?" When I didn't respond immediately, the texts kept coming. They ranged from confused to furious to desperate. By the third day, she was begging me to come back. "I don't know what I did wrong," she wrote. But then came the message that stopped me in my tracks. "I'm sorry. I promise I'll cut him off." I hadn't even suspected an affair. That night, I called her. She answered immediately, her voice sharp and demanding. "What the hell is going on? Why did you leave?" Her anger was palpable, but I didn't respond. Instead, I hung up. A minute later, I called again. She picked up, shouting even louder. I hung up once more. The third time I called, she finally fell silent, letting me speak. I told her everything. I laid bare the truth she had ignored for so long. I explained how I had felt like a ghost in our marriage, invisible and unheard. I told her about my attempts to reconnect, my growing frustration, and my eventual decision to leave. For a month before I left, I said, "I was selling my things and you didn't even notice. It took you 10 days to realize I was gone." Her silence on the other end was deafening. Then I addressed her admission about the affair. "Thank you for confirming what I hadn't suspected," I said calmly. Her breath hitched. She tried to explain, stumbling over her words, but I cut her off. "When you asked me to come back, I said I needed to know why. What's in it for me? What's going to change?" She couldn't answer. After a long pause, I ended the call with finality. "My lawyer will be in touch," I said, then blocked her number. The next day, I bought a new phone with a new number and left my old one behind at a motel. I didn't want any lingering ties to my past. 2 weeks later, my lawyer informed me that the divorce papers had been signed. Just like that, it was over. I kept my promise. I transferred ownership of the house and car to her and set up monthly payments to our shared account for 1 year. I wanted a clean break, free of lingering resentment or unfinished business. After that year, she was on her own. For the past 5 years, I've been living life on my terms. I transitioned to remote work, which allowed me to travel across the country. I visited national parks, small towns, and bustling cities, places I had always wanted to see but couldn't because my wife wasn't interested. I rediscovered passions I had forgotten, like photography and hiking. I began sharing my journey on social media, documenting my adventures through photos and updates. My following grew steadily, and with it came a sense of community. A year after I left, I noticed a familiar name among my new followers, my ex-wife. Out of curiosity, I glanced at her profile. She had moved on quickly, dating someone new just months after our divorce, but the relationship didn't last. Her posts became sporadic after that, and I eventually stopped checking. As for me, I've embraced my freedom. I've had casual relationships, each one teaching me something about myself and what I want or don't want in a partner. For now, I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm content with the person I'm becoming. Recently, I decided to return to my hometown for a reunion. It's a temporary stop, a month or two before I head to Canada for the next leg of my journey. I don't plan to seek out my ex-wife, but if our paths cross, I'll face it with the same calm clarity that guided me away from her. Leaving my wife was the hardest and most liberating decision I've ever made. For years, I felt trapped in a life where I was unseen and unvalued. It took her 10 days to notice I was gone, and that confirmed what I had long feared. Our marriage had been dead for a long time. Now I'm living a life of freedom, exploring the world, and putting myself first. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in years, I'm excited to find out. This journey has taught me that sometimes the most courageous act of love is choosing to let go, letting go of the past, the pain, and the person who couldn't see your worth.